Welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Tullahoma. Welcome to those of you on Zoom, those of you on live stream, and those of you in the building.
Here in Tbilisi, Georgia's capital.
Sorry, this damn phone won't turn
We'll
off.
call him Nikita.
You need to have
In a second. Yeah. I'm sorry, yeah. Yes, would someone please light the chalice? May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. And that's Passover reading. And now for announcements. Debbie.
Zen is kind of off and on right now. Doug and Jancy have both parental health issues, and so they are taking a hiatus until September. Chuck, Margaret, and Rosanna Olson have been taking, Doug's place.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, if there's enough people there.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, you can contact Chuck or Rosanna or me, and we'll be able to give you. But if it's your first time, you need to come 15 minutes early,
Right.
so we can explain what goes on.
Yeah.
But it is, we're still going. It's just we might miss a week.
Okay. Thank you. Rick.
Yeah, the Wednesday night discussion group is kind of like Zen, hit or miss, but we're addressing a book called Ethics in the Real World by a fellow named Singer. It's a collection of 90 essays which are quite varied in their content. We will be doing one or two of those at night on Wednesday nights, starting at 7:15. We will be here at the church and on Zoom. Welcome.
Great. Okay. Any other announcements? Jim.
Yeah, two comments, two announcements. These are both requests for help. The one is ongoing for a long time. Katie needs help with the IT aspect of service. She is sort of the sole person doing it, and there's days she needs a break. So if you can help her, please do. Get with her. The way to learn it is really sit there and walk through it with her and handle that. The other is the Religious Education Committee. The board did establish a RE committee at the last board meeting. Jay Jones is on that as chair, but we're looking for other people to serve on that so that when family shows up with kids, we're ready for it. We have something in place. So if you're interested in that, contact Jane and or me. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Yes.
Yes.
I've worked with Lynn. She did discover that she has some of the religious education material, and so consequently, Carrie and I are going to go there and take lunch one day and pick those up. So we'll have accumulated what we needed for the religious education program.
Right.
Another comment, by the way, is Costa and I had worked on this thing of getting our little blurb in the paper.
Yeah.
Turns out that the papers have all been purchased by an outfit out of Arizona, and they've changed everything. And the guy had as a contract, we didn't react quick enough so that he could put the stuff in for free. Now they charge for each paper that we put a blurb in.
Do you know how
And
much?
so, yes, it's about $30 a week. So it's
For each
almost as
paper?
if it's some business creating an ad in the paper. So we are gonna have to go in another direction to get that done. So it may involve maybe sticking flyers on windshields at Publix
Yeah.
or something.
I don't know if they'll let us do that or not.
It was in the newspaper this week, it was just happenings, which is,
If
The
it
whole
does
page.
list our 7 principles, that's what.
oh, it
it's
doesn't,
shooting
oh,
for.
okay. So it's not that one, so,
They're just continuing to put a little thing in there about the UU Church
Yeah,
existing as one of the religious
Right,
groups in a
yeah.
column. Okay, thanks, y'all.
but, so in today, there's,
okay. Well, that's a shock. I'm gonna have to think about that. Next Sunday's speaker is Daniel Saylor. We've had him before. He is a member of a organization called Ekankar. It's a religion, and it's just, well, it sounds like a lot of beautiful people doing beautiful things together. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again. If you want to donate to the church, please send a check to the UU Church of Tullahoma, P.O. Box 331, and or you can put it in a box in the back of the room, the little shaker box under the clock. And now we're going to do a responsive reading, and I apologize to those online who don't have a copy of the hymnal. 489. When love is felt or fear is known,
When holidays and holy days and such times come,
when anniversaries arrive by calendar or consciousness,
when seasons come, as seasons do, old and new, but somehow new,
when lives are born or people die,
when something sacred sensed in soil or sky,
mark the time.
respond with thought or prayer or smile or grief.
Let nothing living slip between the fingers of the mind.
For all of these are holy things we will not cannot find in.
I don't know if any of you ever noticed, but this is by Max A. Coots, and the Unitarian sign logo next to his name means he was a Unitarian. I think that's interesting to see that. We are fortunate this morning to have Jack Kennington, thank you. I know I was going to say that wrong. He is the chaplain at Compassus Hospice, and he's spoken with us before, and it's always a good talk. So, welcome, Jack.
Well, I think Katie, there you go, you switched the mic.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me again. Come back to, it's an honor to get to share with you. Now, some what I'm going to say is may be some things I said last time. I'm going to go a little different direction, I think, but we'll see. So if it's a repeat, I guess that means I need to say it again. Not necessarily because you didn't get it the first time. But really, a lot of what I'm going to do today is kind of a precursor to the class that we're going to have here, hopefully on August the 10th. I will say also that we need at least 5 people. We've only got 2 so far, Carrie being one and one that's signed up that had experience with Compassus. Now, you don't have to have experience with or had an experience with Compassus to be a part of it. But I'm going to put Debbie on the spot. I just thought of this when I was sitting back there. Debbie, you don't have to stand if you don't want to, but will you kind of give just a couple-minute rundown about what the class is about and how it's helped you that when you took it? Do you mind doing that?
No,
Okay.
I took the class right after my mother died. It was after about a week when the grief finally hit, and I don't know, but somehow I ended up talking to Jack, and he told me about this course. And it's not where you go and you sit and you talk about your loved ones. It is actually me how to live with the grief. You know, the grief is not going to go away, but this is how you can live with it. I think it's what I got.
And you feel like it's helped you with your grief, even down the road this far a little bit down?
I do, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, I haven't been sad in a long time. I mean, memories, but not sadness, you know, not that gut-wrenching.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that from somebody who's had the class, and I tell people it's not for everybody. You know, it's you go real in depth about losses that you've had in the past, and not all just death. It brings out a lot of things that you have to go deep into your soul and share with the group. It kind of builds week by week. The more you get comfortable sharing things, I think the more that you'll feel like you can. We try to create a safe space for you. I'm getting ahead of myself. That you'll feel comfortable sharing. And so I'm going to stop because I think I'm going too much into the class, and that's a little more towards the end. So since most of you, I believe, were here last time, I recognize a lot of familiar faces. And Jim, I'd love to borrow that shirt next time I come if I'm invited back. Jim, right? Up here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great shirt, great colors. So I'm not going to talk a lot about me because most of you already know. As Carrie said, I'm with Compasses. My last notes that I sent Carrie are a little bit wrong because I didn't update them before I sent them, but I've been with Compasses now for 11 years. I've been in hospice work for 14. Like Carrie said, I've done some chaplain work, but now because we've grown a lot, they really assign me more to the grief aspect now, although the chaplain's calling. So this last week, I worked a lot of hours. He's out of the country, so I'm covering for him last week and this week, so it'll be busy. But that's okay. You know, people need that. So I'm just kind of a pinch hitter, so to speak, for our main chaplain. But what else? I think I told you last time I was with Chick-fil-A for 20 years. Pretty much all the work I've done with Chick-fil-A and hospice is really only two things I think I've done. No, I did church ministry, forgot about that. The three things that I've done have all been kind of ministry related. Even though you don't think of Chick-fil-A as being a ministry, you know about the Sundays that they close and the founder that's passed away. All of it kind of ministry related, if that makes sense. So pretty much that's the work I've done. I did become a certified grief recovery specialist in November of 15, and that's the reason I can lead the class. It's based on a book called The Grief Recovery Method. You don't need to get it before it starts because we're going to go through it, you know, kind of first week. I think your homework's like chapters 1 through 3. You read it, come back the next week, and we talk about it. So don't buy the book if you come to the class because you're going to get one in class that's pretty much for free, okay? So like I said, some of this is repeat, and I apologize if I said it last time, but like I said, maybe I need to hear it the second time even if you don't. But the grief recovery goal and definitions are this. We want to get the grief recovery to as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. We don't ever want anybody to say again, where were you 20 years ago when I lost my mom, my dad, you know, my spouse? Where were you when I had this significant loss, you know, those years ago? So I think that I can say that there's only me and one other grief recovery specialist in this area. You have to go to Nashville or Chattanooga to get this type of program. There is one in Shelbyville, but she is affiliated, I don't know if she's affiliated with a church, but she does it out of the church out of First Baptist Shelbyville, but there's a charge. The reason I can offer it for free is because I'm under the umbrella of Compasses. There are people that have this as a business. I mean, they charge and they make money, and they're either retired or they just have this as a job. So, good for them. But we don't charge for it. So you can just thank Compasses for that. I get paid by them, and I don't get paid any extra for doing the class, but it's okay. It's just part of my heart to try to help people. So grief is the normal and natural reaction to any loss. And I didn't bring my handouts this time. I apologize, but we'll have them in the group. There's over 43 losses that can be considered grief. I think I talked about this last time, if I remember right. It's not just death. There's things like loss of career, loss of faith, loss of an animal. Say someone in your house, either a spouse or a child or either a sibling goes off to the military deployment. That can lead to real big grief. Moves, that can lead to big grief, especially if you've had children in that home. And for me, when I was in my 20s and 30s and we moved, it led to major grief. I cried every time we moved because, I had this child here, and this child was born when we were here, and my third child was born. They've all lived in the same house, and so sometimes for them, they don't realize it. I didn't realize it. I was in 3 schools in the 5th grade. That was major grief, although I didn't realize it as grief at the time. But having to make new friends, and it's for some are real shy. For shy children, that's very hard to make new friends. So that can be considered one of the 43 kinds of loss. All right, grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. So your familiar pattern of behavior is forever changed, and the fact that they're not there for those celebrations of even Labor Day coming up. Things that you may have done on July 4th together. Things, I call them the little holidays, although they can become big holidays because those are changed forever for you. It's about you. And so everybody's grief is unique. So the end or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. That's one of the other definitions of grief. Sorry, I get dry, my lips get dry. So grief also is a hope. It's a loss of hopes, of dreams, expectations, and it's what we wish could have been different, better, or more about whatever happens, a loss or any sort of loss of those 43 kinds. It's a loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations. Those are some of the definitions grief recovery has defined as grief. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast? We've got about 25 minutes. Everybody okay?
Everybody.
Okay. I've already mentioned it, got ahead of myself. The 43 types, I mentioned a few that I didn't mention. Infertility, loss of trust, natural disaster, already mentioned career retirement, financial bankruptcy, empty nest, family member in prison, in-laws or other family member problems, and maybe you have one that you think about, but I've not listed up here. We don't really have time to go over it, but if you think about in yourself, in your life, there may be a loss event that could be considered grief other than death. Remember, grief is the conflicting call of feelings, I can't say it. Grief is the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations, so any of those could fit into some of those categories other than death. All right, these are some of the common responses that most people have when grieving. Some of these are common. And actually, I didn't take this from grief recovery, but I call it the SEC. We're down here in SEC country. A lot of you probably are Tennessee folks, and that's to be expected. So you can relate to what the SEC means. And most people, again, most people, not all, but usually have problems with the SEC. It's easy to remember: sleeping, eating, and concentration. Those are 3 things that most grievers may have a problem with, at least one of those, not all. But I'm not too worried about a griever having those problems the first few months of after a loss. But if it's going on 6 months later, it's a little bit of a concern that you might need to tell to a doctor, because A lot of people are opposed to taking medicine to sleep, but fatigue makes cowards of us all, has been said before as a quote. I didn't come up with that. I think it was an athlete that did. But anyway, so that's something that you really need to think about, because grief pulls you down that much. Your whole life is shattered with not being able to concentrate, not being able to eat, or eat too much, or sleep too much. So it can go the other way as well. So really think about those if you've gone through grief, that those three can have a real direct impact on your life. So some others, I mentioned concentration, numbness or lack of energy, grief can cause that. Triggers, those are things that trigger your emotions, things such as, you're in a store and you see your dad's or mom's favorite cereal. You see the gum that they like, you can just be somewhere and hear a song that they liked, and it brings you those triggers that trigger your grief, and you may shed tears, or you may just have a breakdown and have to get out of the store and leave your stuff and go to your car. And you see someone that knew your loved one and they start talking about them, and that triggers your grief. You just break down pretty much, and you just have to stop. So grief is like an emotional roller coaster. I don't know if you can see this, but that's the picture. That's the way grief is. It comes and it goes. It's like an emotional roller coaster, because it's not always bad, but sometimes, and I tell people, sad is not bad, but it's not good if it's constantly with you all the time. It's pulling you apart, and you can't really function. And that's when you need some help, whether it be professional or whether it be a group. There's different ways to think about getting help for your grief. But it's like it comes and goes. It's like the waves. The waves come in, the waves go out. You get knocked over by them sometimes, and then you get back up and you go again. And that's the way grief is. So some of the problems about grief. Grief is very neglected. It's one of the least talked about subjects, even than death. It's just not an acceptable thing that gets talked about. I mean, we'll talk about death, but we just don't. Do they see me straight on, or do I need to look at the screen?
No.
They can see me? Okay. I keep looking at the
This
screen.
is the camera right
I
here.
realize now that I think about it, they can see me here. So it's very little, it's not talked about very much. It's also misunderstood as an illness that is permanent. But grief is not a life sentence. I mean, you're not sentenced to your grief the rest of your life. Now, that doesn't mean you minimize, or people shouldn't minimize the fact that you've had a loss, but it's not something that has to weigh you down the rest of your life. And that's not saying you won't miss them the rest of your life. We're not minimizing that. But as far as having a quality of life again, enjoying some of the things you used to enjoy, you should have that. Grief is also socialized, and it's not natural and not normal. We talked about that being a definition for grief. We also have a problem that we learned at the feet of our parents or grandparents, whoever raised us, that we just didn't talk about it. We didn't really learn a lot about it because our parents, our grandparents, whoever, the other generation didn't really teach us anything about grief. They either told us to hide it, or they didn't talk about it, or we just didn't learn it. So that happened. Also, we've been given the wrong tools. Better information with safety helps lead grievers to their truth. So that's one reason for the group is, to teach you some new tools, to give you a new toolbox to deal with your grief. All right. Others are also not prepared to help you. They don't know what to say or what to do. They don't want to talk about sadness and grief. Then they try to change the subject, and then they want to try to fix you rather than hear you. And then we have unhelpful comments. Any of y'all ever heard those unhelpful comments to you? Well, it's time to get over it. It's time to move on. It's been 3 months. Time to move on. You lost your mom. You lost your dad. You lost a spouse. All right, what's wrong with you? How come you cry a lot? People say the wrong things. People don't want to talk about sadness and grief. They try to change the subject. I want to fix instead of hear. Unhelpful comments, words. There's an article, I think I brought it last time, I didn't bring anything today. It's by Darcy Sims. You can look it up. It's called Words, and it talks about crazy things people say. And believe it or not, even in a church setting, some say, they're in a better place. Well, that may be true, but remember, they're there and you're here, so you're the one left with the grief. Again, it's words if you're writing it down. It's by Darcy Sims, D-A-R-C-I-E Sims. So the better place thing was really hit home with me when I was in a home. I went as, kind of a chaplain, but also the grief part. I was doing both. This young 8-year-old or so little girl, lost her grandmother. And the grandfather was there, and a lot of family was there. So, I don't always go in just saying a lot. I just kind of go in and be there. Your presence means a lot more than your words. So I was there, let them kind of process some of what's going on. I got there probably, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, less than an hour from the time her grandmother had died, and she was taking it pretty hard, as to be expected. She was close to her. And so at one point, she got up in her grandfather's lap and said, I'm going to miss whatever she called her grandmother or grandma so bad. And her grandfather said, yes, but you'll see her again and she's in heaven. And she cried and said, I know, but I'm going to miss her, and I love her so much. And gosh, Grandpa, it feels so bad, and I hurt so much. And he said, well, she's in heaven. And that's when she cried out and said, but I'm not. So that drove home a point to me, even from a child, that part about heaven, we don't understand all that. We don't know about all that. Even with the Bible, or even with something that you've read, saying they're in a better place is not always helpful. For some people it might help, but for a lot of people it does not help, especially children. So others are not prepared to help, okay? I talked about this last time, I'm pretty sure, because it's a major part of grief. We've been taught there's stages of grief. In grief recovery, we teach that that's not true, that there are myths about grief, because when Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote the book on death and dying, she did talk about stages. But later on, before she passed away, she kind of took that away and said, no, I meant the stages of grief a person goes through when they're dying, instead of those that are left. So you've heard anger, bargaining, there's like 5, I don't remember all of them because I don't teach them. But you've heard those before, I'm sure. It's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Stages of Dying. But it was called Stages of Grief. But again, she later, before it came back and said, that's not true, this is for dying. But anyway, we have about 6 of these in grief recovery that we feel like are missed. One is don't feel bad. It'll be all right. Don't feel bad. You'll be okay. Another was replace a loss. Just replace it. You're married, but a year from now, 6 months ago, 6 months from now, just go ahead and marry again and replace it. Or especially it's true with pets. You've lost a beloved pet for 13, 14 years. Just go ahead, go down to the pet store and buy one the next day. It'll replace the loss. Next was grieve alone. And isolation is one of the worst things you can do as a griever, but it's one of the things we go to is grieving alone. It just takes time. Well, that may be true. Time helps separate some of the pain, but it doesn't help you get over grief just like that. Be strong for others. Well, you can either be strong or be truthful and be yourself and take as long as you need, or you can try to be strong for your children or strong for a loved one, but you got to be strong or be human. You have to take your pick. And then keep busy. That's the one I'll probably hear more about than from any other person, is keeping busy. That's what I do to deal with my grief. There's nothing wrong with keeping busy as long as you don't bypass your feelings. You got to feel every feeling that comes your way, whether that's a good feeling or something that bothers you about your loved one, and the grief part as well. So keep that in mind as you're dealing with your grief. I'm going to get into a topic that's a little bit different, but I need to bring it up. We've got about 12 minutes. I think I can finish. And this is a concept that we will teach a little more in depth when we go through the class. It's called STURBS. And Debbie knows about this because she took the class. Let me see if I'm going to finish. I don't want to take too long on this because this can be, just to hear it talked about can be a little bit of a concept. Like, where in the world did that come from? So if you don't take the class, I would urge you to get the book and do it. Go with it. Go through it with another person. You can do it. The Grief Recovery Handbook, if you do it with another person. You don't have to go through the group. I didn't mean to imply that if I did. But they do suggest, if you're going to read the book, to get somebody else with you and talk about it and go through it together. So if we don't get 5 people, we're kind of sunk. Because the reason we have to have 5, we've only got 2, is because I've had groups that started out with about 5 and we got down to 2, and 2 people just cannot, there's just not enough interaction. Now, I've ended the group with 3 before, and that's fine if we start at 5 and go to 3, but the issue is the last group I tried to teach in the spring of this year, we started out with 3 or 4 and we got down to 1. So I had to stop the group. And that's just not good. It really leaves that person that was left a terrible feeling. Well, I came every week and this person stopped. You know, it's just not good. So that's why I've just said anymore, we're not going to do a group of less than 5, even though it punishes the ones that are signed up and want to learn. So anyway, I got off topic. Short-term energy relieving behaviors are defined by we call STURBS, STERBS. Short-term energy relieving behaviors. STURBS. They're also known as sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Okay? Just kidding there. It's meant to be funny. But things like food, alcohol and drugs, exercise, shopping, work, social media, movies, porn, anything that you bypass your feelings towards and you replace it with these things on a real consistent basis, it kind of shows that you're dealing with a STURB, because you're bypassing your feelings and you're shifting them all to these things. And there's plenty more. Anybody think anything else that could be a STURB that you used or somebody else you love or have worked with in grief has used? There's a lot more. That's just the main ones. Shopping, of course, is retail therapy.
Number 1.
Number 1, yeah. I said shopping, but I didn't say retail therapy. And like I said, not all these are bad necessarily, but you can't use it as a crutch. Because people, if they use these, will tend to keep using these. And again, what's that short term mean? It means in short term, these behaviors are going to hurt you long term. They're not going to help you. They might get rid of a feeling or behavior early on, but if you continue to go to them, they're not going to help you with your grief. I know that's kind of maybe a confusing concept. If you get the book and you go through it with someone and you can't do the group, you will cover this in more detail when you get the book, okay? And if you don't, you can't do the group, Debbie can fill you in. She's gone through the class. But anyway, that's what STURBS are. S-T, if you're writing down, S-T-E-R-B-S. Don't think the BS is a bad thing. But it can be. Okay. Grief recovery availability. The best way to get grief help and grief recovery is right away. There's no benefit to waiting. It can be for new loss or previous loss. It's kind of like a broken arm and a flat tire. If I leave my car here at the church and I've got a flat tire and I come back a year later, guess what? I still got a flat tire unless somebody was nice enough to either call for help, and I had the insurance where they would send somebody to fix it, or one of you guys or ladies fixed it, or I did something to help the tire to get inflated again. A year later, if I don't, bingo, still flat. That's kind of the way grief is. If you don't do something to fix it, to get better, to recover, then it's like a broken arm and a flat tire. Also, one other way for availability is because you have a broken heart that leads you to recovery. The program was a 9-week, Debbie mentioned, it's structured program. It's action oriented and it teaches you in small steps to make correct choices. So we have been able to finish the class before in 8 weeks, but I do a 9-week cushion because sometimes if we have 5 people, 2 or 3 may need one particular Thursday night off, and so we don't meet that week. Or I may have something that came up and I can't meet, but we communicate that among the group and we all agree whether we're not going to meet that night or meet. Because if you really miss more than one of the 9 weeks, you really cannot catch up because we have homework each week. You don't turn that into me, we just discuss it. And so if you miss more than one, it's kind of hard to catch up. So that's why we say 9 weeks in case we need a cushion for another week. Okay, the goals of the grief recovery group is we're not going to tell you what or how to feel. We're not going to tell you that. It's going to be confidential with no judgment. We're not going to judge how you're feeling. We want to be a heart with ears for you. We want to have more listening than we do talking with you. We want to find and complete recent or past undelivered communication. We want to transform the quality of your life so at some point you may be able to help others that are going through what you're going through now. We want above all, the biggest thing about a group is to create safety. Because if you don't feel safe, you're not going to share. So, and that's not always done the first week because you're, a lot of times, unless you know the people, you're not going to share. Eddie, get that second page for me. I can't get it. I don't want to lick my fingers. Get that second page for me. Thank you. All right. So we're talking about grief recovery now. These are all things about the group. Like I said, I may have said some of this early on and got ahead of myself. Anyway, why grief recovery? Well, it helps you to work on the pain and any regrets that you may have. It doesn't mean you'll never be sad. We allow for a full range of human emotions. We process every feeling, and I already mentioned this, feel all of your feelings. It also helps you have a better relationship with those that are living. So we do the class based on the book. I'll show you a picture of the Grief Recovery Handbook. That's a picture of it. Let me show them. Like I said, don't go out and buy it. You can if you're not going to take the group, but I wouldn't suggest it if you're going to take the group. So you can get it at the library, you can check it out, or it's online at Amazon, the bookstore, or you can get it from the Grief Recovery people. I think the website's www.griefrecoverymethod.com. They, let's see, yeah, that's it. I got it here in my notes. So you can find a specialist. I mean, I do some one-on-one work. Come to a group. What else? I've got plenty of materials. If you'll just contact me, you need something specific to your grief, whether, I think I talked about this a lot last time, about guilt, about forgiveness, about whatever the topic you may be struggling with, I'll be glad to give you help, all I can. Even if you don't, it's not it's not one of those things, if you don't take the group, you're doomed. I don't want it to make it like that. I'll be glad to continue to help you regardless. Okay, so the groups, like I said, minimum of 5, maximum about 8, because you get more than 8, it's kind of like the minimum. Nobody gets to say a whole lot because we might have 1 or 2 that are dominating the conversation. That's why we say heart with ears, because we're going to listen better than we talk. So again, it's an 8 or 9 week commitment. I think we're going to meet here 5:30, 7:45. I don't exactly know where here. Where's it going to be?
It's going to be in the RE room, the religious education room.
Okay, back here.
All the way in the back.
Okay, show me when we take a break so I know kind of.
It's off the kitchen there, a couple
Okay.
steps down.
We have big chairs.
Yeah, we're gonna have big chairs.
Okay. We appreciate you all inviting us to have the group here. We usually about once a year. We go away from Compassus, and people like you all invite us to have it at their particular business or church or wherever. So this is our one time away from the office. So we appreciate that. Let's see. The value of the class, and I've already mentioned, it's free to you. Many people charge anywhere from $300 to $500 a person. So how do you sign up? You can, we're done here, I've got to say this.
You're fine.
You can call me at Compassus. If you do email, I'll give you my email address, or you can text me. Any of those three ways. My email, I go by Jack, but it's gonna, my email is Robert. So it's Robert.Kennington, KENNINGTON, Robert.Kennington at Compassus, COM, and think about it, COMPASSUS.com. Somebody help me out there. I don't know who it was, one of you over here. Somebody said something. Is it you, David?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. And if you want to text me, let me give you my work cell phone number, which I forgot to tell Carrie, it's back there. I'm on call. If I get called out in our next group, I may have to leave. I forgot to tell you. It'd be bad to get up here in the first 10 minutes, I get a ring and I'm called out. But the other chaplain is gone out of the country. So like I told you, I've been doing that all week and I've got it next week. Most every weekend I take call in case a family, needs me to come out. Very rarely does it happen, but it has happened before. And I figure if it's gonna happen, it's gonna be on a day where I've got something going on. So I forgot to tell you, Carrie, I'm sorry. But so far, no call. But I do have to keep my phone. I turned my personal phone off, but I have to leave my work phone on. What was I talking about?
Your mobile.
Yeah, I'm sorry. 931. Deb, you probably have my number. I think I got yours on my phone. 931-434.
6313.
6313.
I thought you'd forgotten.
931-434-6313. Right on time, I believe.
Very good one.
All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Nope, I didn't have his phone number.
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
Compassus was a lot of help to us when my mother passed. So let's close with our closing song on page 414.
Stand if we're able.
Right, stand if you're able and will, or stand if you're able and willing. That Christian over there's not gonna stand up. Oh my goodness. If we couldn't laugh, what would we do? As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we earn light our hearts till we return. And we'll meet back at, let's say, 10 minutes after